So here we are, another episode of HopeSpeak. I'm your host, Tyler Hope, aka Hopey. Today we have Mackenzie Baker, a very well-renowned nutritionist. Can you let the listeners know more about you so they can get a better insight than probably what I would describe?
Yeah. Well, firstly, thanks so much for having me. I really like doing these little talks, and nothing like a couple of blokes having a chat. I reckon.
For
I
sure.
reckon they're the best ones. So a bit about me. Online sport and exercise nutritionist. I work with a company called Fortitude Nutrition Coaching.
They're based in
Myself,
Brisbane?
in Sydney, but it's
Okay.
online style format. I just happened to be the founder, Josh. He is living in Sydney as well. I'm in
Mm-hmm.
Sydney right now because I'm currently injured. What else can I tell you? I guess my main hobby would be surfing,
Mm-hmm.
which I currently can't do because I've just had ACL reconstruction surgery
Mm-hmm.
after I tore that 3 months ago in Indonesia.
Mm-hmm.
I got a master's in sport and exercise nutrition as well. Did my research in low energy availability
Yep.
in
Very
surfing
common.
populations. Yep. So
Mm-hmm.
that's that relative energy deficiency in sport type conundrum that the listeners may or may not be familiar with, and we can go into that, but maybe not. We'll just leave it at that for now. And
Well, it was
um,
actually one of the reasons why I wanted you on, because it's very
okay,
predominant also in combat sports.
it is. Yeah, yeah. So we can talk about that for sure. And yeah, I guess that's probably a bit of a rundown. So right now I'm just like recovering from surgery, and
Mhm.
life's a bit not ideal, but can't complain about too much. It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is, and you're going to focus on what you can do, not what you can't do. And it's a common thing. Another reason why I wanted you on is that a lot of fighters, they get injured, and then the diet goes out the window, especially when it's like knees and stuff, and then you whack on weight. There's more
Mm.
load on that knee when you're just trying to get around, and it just makes that healing process a lot harder. So have you dealt with other clients with similar issues when you find them kind of just fall off the wagon? What would you say the ratio would be?
The ratio of people falling off the wagon,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
yeah. Well, look, first thing I'll say is I strongly I do everything I can to
Mm-hmm.
steer clients away from this sort of like this idea that there is a wagon and there
Yeah,
is
yeah,
something that
okay.
you can fall off from. And really, when we're thinking about a bandwagon, we're thinking about or referring to all or nothing thinking. We're on plan,
Mm-hmm.
we're off plan. We're on track,
Totally.
we're off track. We're on the bandwagon. And this sort of thinking is honestly setting people up for failure because
Mm-hmm.
any
So
meaningful
all or
goal,
nothing.
yeah, any meaningful goal that you have in mind, whatever goal that is that's related to nutrition, you are going to encounter speed bumps along the way. And
100%.
it's going to make either it not feasible for you to adhere to whatever plan or bandwagon you had in mind,
Mm-hmm.
or adhering to it will become really, really difficult where basically it's not feasible. And if you have this sort of I'm on or off the bandwagon approach, then you automatically tend to default to like the write-off mentality or the what the hell effect
Yeah.
whenever you do encounter a small speed bump or an obstacle. Now, given that obstacles and speed bumps in your nutrition journey for whatever goal, given it's a when, not an if thing, so it's a when, you're gonna have
Yeah,
an
yeah,
injury,
100%.
you're gonna have just you're not feeling good, you're gonna have a shit week at work, you're gonna have, your dog's sick, you're gonna have, expenses come up. Well, like
You tear your
this is life.
ACL.
You tear your ACL. And if you have that all or nothing mindset, you're destined for literally writing off any thought of conscious nutrition. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
someone with a dimmer knob mindset or a flexible mindset goes,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, this is a situation. What are the things that are within my control? What
Mm-hmm.
can I do to act upon those things?
Yeah.
So to be honest, I mean, I don't actually really have many clients who, fall off the bandwagon, so to speak. I have clients who slip up, but very early on, is it about sliding back into routine and not letting a slip up turn into a full blown write off?
100%.
So if you were to ask me, like, what's the ratio? I would say it's low as anything.
Yeah, okay.
I've had actually one extreme case in particular where I was working with a national level weightlifter,
Mm-hmm.
back injury, and then really like, I think honestly that was probably the end of their career as a
Yeah.
weightlifter. Not that they were like, permanently injured or anything, but it was just it was such a meaningful injury that I think they threw in the towel with the whole weightlifting
Yeah,
thing. And he's
and
talking
with
like national champ sort of level.
yeah, and he was a
Um,
bit later in his years as well, so there's like they kind of get that mindset. I've got 4 or 5 years left of kind of competing.
yeah, so I hate to be one of those woke people, but female client.
Yeah,
And no, I had plenty of years competing, but was probably actually on the precipice of full the potential.
yeah.
So it is quite sad, I think, but that is one client who I reflect on, and I think that's a shame.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I see that kind of stuff as well. Well, the reason why I was saying because I've seen it, I guess maybe with friends of myself, in their 30s, and they
Mm,
have an injury like that. It's like, I'm getting too old now. It's going to take me 2, 3 years
mm,
to kind of really get back. Which probably isn't the truth. You can probably have a good turnaround in a year, but I guess other athletes, from the past, like maybe old methods as well, they believe 2 to 3 years to get back
mm.
there. So like, what's the point? Like, once I'm getting to that 2, 3 years, I'm getting too old. Um,
Yeah, I think
so
I think it depends a lot on why you do the sport.
yeah,
Like, do you do it because you have to be a gun at it, or do you do it because it's fun?
yeah,
Like, if you're playing professional sport or like competitive sport, and you get a pretty major injury, and you're sort of like you've had a career now, and you've got other life things like maybe you've got a mortgage, maybe you've got a business,
hmm,
and even if it's not the recovery time, even if it's just how invasive, like if you have to get surgery and how
hmm,
painful that is, and like you can't walk for a bit, and it's like you got to ask yourself, like, am I willing to go through that again?
hmm,
And I can see why people would say, I'm not going to, you know, be a high level athlete in this particular sport. But if you do it as like a leisurely activity,
hmm,
it's like you do it for fun. It's like I don't have to be my very, very best. So, like for me, it's surfing. And
yeah,
yeah, I want to surf my very, very best. But, I've actually years ago already given up on the idea of trying to perform as high level as I can in surfing. And,
yeah.
I've been riding twin fins for like 6 years now. And,
Okay,
I don't know how much you know about surfing, but
not a lot.
the world tour guys, like the pros, there's a kind of standard performance shortboard that is basically the blueprint of a surfboard if you want to do your best performance surfing. And then there are all these other sort of surfboard subcategories, and the twin fin is something that is more about going fast and enjoying yourself and gliding and
Mhm.
yeah, just going really fast and doing big turns. It's not
Okay,
about like trying to do big airs and all this crazy shit. And I've already moved away from that mentality of like I need to be the best I can be at the sport. I've been away from that for
yeah,
years. So surfing now is literally just a leisurely activity.
yeah,
So for that reason alone, like there's enough reason to get back into it. I don't really know where I was going with it, but I think a lot of people give up because they think it like for me to do this
mm,
sport, I'm like an athlete and I have to be competitive and I have to be
mhm.
yada 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 yada. I think a big part of it depends on what you want from the sport or the activity.
I think it was also when you like attach your identity to the sport as well. And a few years back, where I was pretty heavy into bodybuilding, I even like hosted a few shows and stuff like that. I was quite ingrained in it, and then I had planned to try win my pro card and made the decision if I didn't get my pro card, I was going to retire. I still won the overall, but then the president was pretty much like, "Oh, you're still not good enough to get your pro card, even though you won." So I got like denied. So that kind of crushed me. And then there was a bit of a down spiral, I guess, in that sense, because I had attached my identity to the sport. And when I was retiring, like, well, what do I do with my life, kind of thing? And I lost my
Mm,
passion with even trying to coach bodybuilding, and that makes it like why I kind of got a little bit to more the wellness side, and then bridging into doing jiu-jitsu, which I am now. Should make sense. Recently, well, last year I got hit by a car on an electric scooter, and I tore my pec and ruptured my shoulder.
yeah, I
And
remember that.
yeah. So it was pretty hectic. And even before that, I tore the long head of my bicep off the shoulder. So I've had a few bad ruptures and stuff. And just because I am trying to get better at jiu-jitsu and just enjoy the sport, I was getting back after 3, 4 weeks, somewhat training at extent, because I just loved it
Mm,
and loved being there. It wasn't like my identity that I had to try to be the
mm.
greatest. And I think with what you're saying, it just makes a whole lot of sense why I was able to get back to it. There was no pressure of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's an interesting one because if you want to be really good at a particular sport or activity, you almost have to make it part of your identity
Yeah.
because the level of training, like you live and breathe it. And all of a sudden you're injured and
Mhm.
a big chunk of your identity just gets pulled out from under you. And,
Mhm.
it's really like people say things like, oh, don't let your identity get too tied into your sport. And people will even argue that there are ways to not let that happen to you.
Mhm.
And I think that there's a lot of truth to that, but I think it's difficult for a lot of people to fathom that.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people would argue that, again, if you want to be like really high level and everything you can into something, you're inevitably going to you're going to embody this identity as I'm an athlete in this sport.
I guess
And
even when
a
you're
lot of
getting
other
to
things
the,
get,
I was gonna say
sorry,
when
you
you
go.
even get into that high level, like you
Yeah.
have to. But I guess when that high level becomes your baseline because you're used to it, then you can
Yeah.
probably venture out. And that's probably why some of these top athletes start doing these side like volunteering things and stuff to not be too ingrained because I assume that's pretty draining as well.
Oh, yeah. Super difficult. Like the mental aspect of my injury,
Hmm.
because, like I'm in my 20s and for me, I have this job and this setup where I can live everywhere I want, live
Hmm.
anywhere I want, and I have this internal obligation to fulfill or take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And, this is my identity. This is the lifestyle I want to leave. I want to make every second of my 20s count.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you're looking at going back to Sydney where you grew up. You're back to square one, not in terms of like your career, but just
Yeah,
psychologically, like I'm back
physically.
to where I
Yeah.
started. Yeah, and physically, and that's a year of your 20s that you kind of like, I'm not going to be able to live the life that I wanted to live because of this like
Hmm.
split second injury.
Yeah.
And that was a hard pill to swallow. But you know what? Like once I committed to the surgery, everything got easier
Yeah.
because I knew that you knew that there's no like there's always a worst case scenario, like the surgery could have gone bad or
Hmm.
blah 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 blah. But really, you're kind of like when I was pre-surgery, there was like you could get the surgery, could not get it. So there's
Hmm.
always like what could be the worst case scenario and like having anxiety over that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that again. We're going off
I
on
had the exact
tangents,
same thing when I
but
tore the long head of my bicep. I was like, do I need
yeah.
to do it? Well, I'm never going to be bodybuilding again, so I don't need it
Mm.
cosmetically, which is one of the main reasons. And I was a bit
Mm.
humming and ahhing. Yeah, I ended up not going for it because, well, one, it was delayed. It was 10 weeks by the time I could get in because of COVID slowed down everything.
Yeah.
And then I could do chin ups again. I was only being able to do like 6 or so. I was like, well, do I need to attach it when I can do chin ups, which a large percent of the population still can't even do? So I'm like, okay, it's stronger enough. And then
Yeah.
I could still roll without pain. I was like, cool. Why am I going to have more time off after surgery? But obviously, your
Will
case
it
was a bit
heal though?
different. Yeah, so I don't know if you can see very well here, but it's kind of like
Yeah.
not attached. So I think technically there's like a smidgen left where and it feels like there's like a tiny, tiny bit of it still attached. So it's kind of dropped down. But a lot of people who do it, it like completely comes off and they get like that weird Popeye arm.
Oh yeah.
They said it was a full rupture when they did the MRI, but it hasn't completely dropped. I think there's like a few mil thick still attached.
These things, I'm not sure about bicep tendons or whatever, but at least for the ACL, like it was always thought of something that can't heal by itself,
Yeah.
but there is new evidence showing that it can. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of it depends on after it ruptures, what it's doing. Like mine flipped
Mm-hmm.
on itself, so there's no way it was
Yeah.
going to reattach,
Yeah.
right? The other thing is if you get it into a brace with a range of motion restricted protocol for 12 weeks called the cross bracing protocol. The
Mm-hmm.
point is, like, even if these things happen, there's always, to my understanding, and I could be completely wrong, I'm not a physiotherapist, but
Yeah.
they might sometimes heal. I believe there's a possibility of that happening in a lot of cases. So I don't know if that's the case for the rest of your bicep, but even my mum, she tore her ACL like 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
didn't get the surgery, and then ripped her hamstring off the bone a couple of years ago. Got an MRI, and they looked at her knee and said, "Actually, you have an ACL here," which was like a
Wow.
major wig out.
Yeah.
So, you ask yourself, was there a misdiagnosis like 25 years ago or whatever it was? But, you never know. Like I'm saying,
Mm.
you just, with time and just you're obviously training, you're moving, you're putting tension on it. maybe there's an avenue that those things sort of reattach themselves. I don't know, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
Or even whatever, I just had the thought after a while, like whatever is still attached is going to get strong enough to maintain. And everything else around it
There
is
you
going
go.
to get even stronger to withstand that. So it's very
Yeah.
rarely that I get any pain in that. The only other thing is that I have more range in it than the other side. Because it also
Yeah.
like apparently the long head acts like a rotator cuff kind of as well. So
Yeah.
there's just so sometimes like in jiu-jitsu, if I'm on my back and someone's trying to do Americana, which is like a shoulder lock, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter because the ground stops it going enough. So like I can't kind of get
Yeah.
Americana on certain angles. But then it's just not as strong. So it's like a win-lose, win-win kind of situation. So going
Yeah.
back to
Because if you did
your
get pulled back, you'd be looking at shoulder stuff.
yeah, yeah, and
I was just
obviously
saying, yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
going back to your surfing injury, tell us what happened at that moment. You said it was a split second. Like, what actually happened?
Honestly, dude, wasn't even that bad. Like, the shittest thing about all of this is that I'm like, how is this injury and the pain level and like the fact everything that happened with it, how is this a year out sort of thing? Because it was like a 1 foot day in South Sumatra in Indonesia, like tying. I was just going for a surf, but there was a bit of backwash, and I
Yep.
was on my backhand. I hit the lip of the wave as a bit of backwash hit the wave, so I kind of got compressed in the lip into like a really, really deep squat.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just pushed. Imagine if you had a really heavy bar on your back, like
Yeah.
200% of your max, and you just went right down. Your knees just went like
Yeah.
your ass hits your heels, sort of thing. And I just felt a bit of a. I didn't hear anything. I think I was underwater or something. I don't know, but I just felt like like, oh, that was a stretch. I
Yeah.
call it a stretch. And I was like, oh, it's a bit sore. Paddled back out, and I was like, oh, that it feels like it's stretched because in your mind you think that like your foot's floppy,
Yeah.
like your lower legs floppy. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Um, but I was like, oh, it's probably just sprain. I actually got another wave and rode it in. And I and
Okay.
I, I got to the beach and I was thinking like, oh, should I just call it a day and just like ice it or something, or should I keep going? I was like, nah, you should probably ice it. So I got in, I walked up the beach, I was limping a bit, but I was like, oh, it's a bit sore. I've stretched it. I thought that's what I thought. I've
Yeah.
stretched it. Walked along the beach up to where I was staying. Yeah, no worries. Yeah. Boys, I kind of hurt my knee. It doesn't feel that good, but I'm probably be fine. Can we get some
Mm-hmm.
ice on it?
Yeah.
Anyway, that afternoon,
It's
I was
just
like, this
throbbing.
doesn't feel that good. No, it wasn't that bad. I was like, this
Yeah.
is
Okay.
this is fine. It's a little bit swollen. I was just thinking I sprained it. Went out for another surf at like close to dark, and I took off one pump, and my knee just gives way. And I go, that's not a sprain. And
Yeah. Okay.
instantly, I knew that like
The
there was
previous one.
something like kind of yeah, I knew that something was wrong here. I
Yeah.
knew that this is more than just a sprain, but I kept surfing the whole trip. The whole trip, another week and a half, I kept
Yeah.
surfing.
I remember seeing that. You're
Uh,
still getting some
yeah,
in.
I was still surfing. I was getting tubes, everything, and I was like, but it's interesting because you knew something was wrong, but it wasn't actually that bad.
Yeah.
But you just know something's a bit off here. So I went to Jakarta to get the MRI, booked a hotel for like 4 nights because
Mm-hmm.
I ended up just booking one night, but then it just extended.
Yeah.
You got to go see this other doctor, and whatever. And I had the MRI, and the radiologist, not even the guy who reads the reports or anything or comes up with the reports, just the guy who like I don't know how you call it, the person who conducts the
The
scan.
machine. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
in Australia, yeah, in Australia, that you have to talk to the doctor, and they won't tell you the results, and like
Yeah.
all these, they're like, Mister, I see on the MRI, not good for you, brother. I'm like, oh, all right. And then yeah, it was a plane. It was a plane straight away back to Sydney, and here we are. So that was the injury.
I honestly would rather that instantly it's not looking good. So then you can start mentally preparing for actually what it is. Like when I went and got the MRI for my shoulder, for my bicep, I remember having to wait 3 days. Like, is it okay? Is it that bad? I knew something was bad because it was physically kind of deformed, but
Yeah,
just that unknowing kind of suspense was fucking the worst.
yeah. I mean, that was me for that 8 days, like when I was still on the trip after I did it.
Mm-hmm.
So that deal because I was like, I'm still surfing. I'm limping though. It hurts. I have to nurse it a bit. Something's wrong. My question is like, is this going to be you're just resting up for 2 weeks, or is this going to be the worst case scenario at the time, which was the ACL? Because, I Google like common knee injuries, and then I'm searching, oh, this ACL thing. Oh, okay. Oh shit, you got to get surgery. They're drilling holes in your bones. Oh,
Yeah.
what? I'm like, so
I,
yeah, there was that. I had that for a bit, which is really, I was not in a good place.
I made a mistake YouTubing like live videos of
Yeah.
them reattaching the long head. It's like physically seeing the inside camera of it going inside, like drilling. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I could almost like visually feel, like I could feel the pain visually from watching. I was like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. But
Yeah,
definitely.
let me tell you. When I was in Melbourne the other week, I went on the Melbourne Strength Culture podcast, and
Yep.
Jamie Smith was like, "Have you seen like videos of the ACL surgery?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "You should go check them out."
What an asshole.
I was like, "No, I think I'll wait." So anyway, actually this morning, I was speaking to my physio on FaceTime, and I was saying how, there's still pain. He was saying, of course there's going to be pain. Like, have you seen what they do to your leg? They're drilling in, they're banging this thing. I'm like, I don't know. He's like, mate, they're getting a Ryobi in there. And I'm like, all right. So I was like, okay, I'm going to look at these videos. So this morning I actually got up, there was this 7-minute summary video, and geez, mate, it is. They're like getting the drill in it. This huge drill, and they're getting the hammer, and they're
I've seen it as like a
they're
crowbar
freaking
thing.
pulling it. Oh, mate. I was like, geez. He's like, yeah, you've basically got a fracture in both of your biggest bones in your body.
Yeah.
And that's healing right now. And those two bones are like pushing against each other. I'm like, yeah, okay. I was like, wow. That was full on.
So I seen you do a little post about what you're trying to do to maximize your recovery. I think you mentioned something about collagen protein. So let the listeners know like what you've kind of opted for, and I guess what you feel is somewhat a success so far.
Yeah, so I'm going to just hit this from a nutrition angle because that's my field.
For sure.
So just so the listeners are aware, after the injury, I did 3 months of non-surgical rehab, which, because there was this idea that maybe there could be some healing, maybe you could be a coper, which basically means you cope without an ACL, but you need to get everything strong, and like there's going to be some damage that it's going to need a repair. So I was like, all right, I'm really desperate. I'm going to dot every I and cross every T. And usually with nutrition and clients, I'm always like a low hanging fruit, big rocks before little pebbles, focus on the things that are actually going to definitely work. And even of the things that are going to work, the ones that are going to bring the biggest return on effort. But I was pretty much like the attitude of anything I can do, whatever it takes. So there are 3 primary things I did to my nutrition beyond what I was already doing.
Yeah.
The first thing, and the biggest one, is I ate more calories. Now, the reason for this is low energy availability, which is essentially when the amount of calories you have left over after you've taken care of exercise. If that amount of calories is low, recovery, repair in all forms, whether it be injury, illness, whatever, that is blunted.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's no surprise to the listeners if they know a thing or two about training and nutrition. So the first thing I did was increase my calories because I wanted to make sure that I was in a state of adequate energy availability. And this was bolstered by the fact that when I got back from Indonesia, I weighed myself after, I think it was a year and a half of travel, and I was like in the 60s. Which for me, I was like, mate, you are sticking bones. I was like, you need to eat some food. Heaps of surfing, like travel, that sort of thing.
I think eating
slowly
like
lost weight
Asian
over
food
time.
as well, like the portions are relatively controlled. Like it's a lot of it's kind of like just like rice, veg, meat. Like it's pretty simple. Obviously, there's a lot more fats added in, but I've noticed that too. Like I've dropped a bit of weight. One, I don't care too much. I've lost my passion with weightlifting, resistance training, so I'm just focusing on jits, but that's still resistance on the body. But it's just, I think it's quite easy to maintain your weight, at least eating like Asian style food. So what was the second thing you did?
Increasing calories primarily from carbohydrates. Also because I was hammering the non-surgical rehab, and let me tell you, mate, these training sessions, they were like, there was a lot of volume in them. I was like, this is an hour and a half, 4 times a week, which for me is like a hard resistance training exercise. And it wasn't just like little rehabby exercise. It was like, we're getting on the leg press, we're doing deadlifts, all the things. Anyway. So the other thing was protein nutrition. Um, Throughout my travels, was I eating an ideal amount of protein? Probably not. I was probably short of it. But protein nutrition extends beyond just eating enough. It's also about the timing, the distribution across the day.
Yeah.
So it was about every 3 to 5 hours, a bolus of about roughly 20 to 40 grams of protein. So
Mhm.
really for me, that's breakfast, lunch, afternoon snack, dinner. That was sort of my eating routine because
Yeah.
that would provide, assuming the meals had at least a palm-sized rough portion of a protein-rich food,
Mhm.
that's going to provide the adequate total across the day, but then also satisfy the requirements for the timing and distribution.
Yeah.
So that was the second thing I did. The third thing was more on the repair side of things. So I actually started taking a vitamin C enriched collagen powder. Now,
Mhm.
this is probably going to be the most controversial one because
Yep.
I think, as someone who understands research to a reasonable degree, not to a PhD level or that sort of thing, but a master's level, can read research. I don't think the research on collagen for like connective tissue healing is overly like amazing.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to do something. But there is promise. So I was like, can I afford the $44 for the bulk nutrients
Yeah.
collagen with vitamin C? Yes. Am I going to try it? Yes. So that's probably the third thing I did. Um, I also actually there was a fourth thing. It was around fats, primarily omega 3s. I
Mhm.
basically just started to eat more salmon. So about twice a week I aimed for,
Was that for
because previously to
inflammation
that,
or?
yeah, because the omega 3s, again, it's like, is it really going to do anything? I don't know. You can take a fish oil supplement, but I enjoy
Mhm.
salmon.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I'm just going to try and eat that,
Yeah.
a little bit
I
more often,
I think
other
just going to
rather than
Whole
never.
Foods in general is a good basis to try out. Like, I think people always just steer to getting a supplement all the time, and it's just
Hmm.
I just think it's poor habit.
Yeah. Yeah, the phrase that I like for that is food first, but not food only. So
Yeah.
if we look at the criteria, it's like, can you get this realistically and feasibly from Whole Foods?
Mhm.
And there are situations where it's inconvenient, even though you can do it, in which case it would warrant a supplement
Yeah.
or preference based. So for example, like you're not going to put chicken breast in your oats. You'd like to have oats in the morning, you want protein in it, easy option is protein powder. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Good old.
So
I slide this
yeah,
in my
that was what I did.
coffee.
Yeah. What is that, Thai spec?
Yeah, no, it's just a Thai like protein thing. Just get it
Hectic.
from the 7-Eleven.
Hectic.
44
How good
baht.
are like I love how I'm not sure if it's the same in Thailand, but in Indo they have protein bars that are like it's called like a men's protein bar. They don't make them
Okay.
for women. It's just like the branding is for men.
Well, it's like it's I guess it's part of their culture, like for women to be a lot more smaller and petite, like it's
Yeah.
part of their culture. Um, yeah, I worked out like because protein powder is quite expensive here, and same with creatine. So it's like it's only saves me a little bit of money to buy like half a kilo of protein powder than buying like these just at the
Yeah.
7-Eleven.
And
So
they
I just
probably
buy.
taste better.
Yeah, they do. They do. So
Yeah.
that's like I'll just buy them. So I'm dropping
Yeah,
in
fair
getting
enough.
water, every second day or so as well.
Yeah. Makes
Hmm.
sense.
So relating to moving to online, I actually in someone in the same field. What was because I have some friends that are trainers and stuff. What was the biggest hurdle for you really getting into that space?
Pulling the balls out of me purse. That was the biggest hurdle.
Yeah.
So I was already in a position where I could realistically be online long before I did it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was that safety. It was that, oh, I'm fully reliant on me bringing clients in. That's really scary.
Yeah.
And it took COVID and me being like, I can't do face-to-face PT in Sydney anyway.
Yeah.
So all I can do is online. Why would I be here? And
Mm-hmm.
basically making that decision to handing the keys in for my rental property was a 36-hour turnaround.
Yeah.
And then the car was packed and I was out
Yeah. Okay.
and just drove up the coast. Just said, was one of those Sydney people who bailed, but it was before it got bad. So kind of
Mm-hmm.
like wasn't one of those people who tried to go up the coast after it was all lockdowning and stuff.
Yeah,
No,
it was a mess
I did
then.
it before. Yeah, I did it before. Um, and basically spent a good amount of time in like the northern rivers.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there. So yeah, that was probably my biggest barrier, to be honest, because I was already coaching people online, already had enough clients to sustain myself online. Realistically, there was enough interest that I could keep getting clients in to just go online, but I kept doing it. So that was definitely the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, because I've got a few little, I won't say little trainers, but they're trainers. I have this little group called ETG, where it's Empower Trainer Growth with Hope. Was my little. We've got a few guys who are struggling PTs trying to get, more business and be more sustainable, and they all struggle with creating content. And I think even people, I think, struggle to want to create content because they feel like it's for free. It's not worth time because they're not assured the sale and whatnot. I remember talking to you some time ago. I was already starting to create more frequently, but you're like, I really believe it's valuable to other people providing this information, and I enjoy making it. So like, it was along those lines, and that was like another moment for me. It's like, it's valuable to people, and one of my core values is contribution. So I was like, if I just really attach that I'm contributing to people and I only help one person, it's like, it's worthwhile, even though it is for free. Was there a moment that you struggled creating content, or did you just find it quite natural?
There has definitely been many, many moments where I've struggled creating content, but getting into content creation was a pleasure. A few reasons for that. I liked it, was the biggest one.
Yep.
And I thought I was all right at it. And I liked graphics because I did design at uni as my undergrad.
Okay.
So I liked playing around with that. I liked the idea of collating ideas into bite-sized things that can actually be digested by the audience. So it was easy for me to do it because I liked it. Now, I think if you don't like doing it, uphill battle. And people will say, well, it's free. Like I'm putting work in for free. Think about companies and what they spend. They're not just doing it for free. They're spending money on marketing. But for me, it was never really about marketing. It was just me wanting to talk about nutrition. And that was probably why I liked it, because I wanted to talk about nutrition. And therefore it was never hard for me. It didn't actually get hard for me to do content until I was established. And, and since I've established myself as an online nutritionist, I've had phases where I've just been really like off it and not really enjoying it, just going through the motions. And then I get into it a bit, and I'm a bit more passionate about it, and I have a bit of fun with it. And because of that, I have some things that go all right, and it's a bit of a boost. And it's just like this cycle. Like for example, in January, when I was living in the Gold Coast for a month, I was thinking more about content. And I made some good stuff and I enjoyed it and I was passionate about it. But then when I went overseas, I was focused with other things and content became more of a chore. And because it's more of a chore, it isn't like your best work. And then, I come back to Australia and then I'm thinking more, I've got more mental space. So therefore I make better content. It's just like this endless cycle. But yeah, I definitely have. The thing for me is like, it's a weekly non-negotiable. Like I do 2 posts minimum a week, 2 posts, 2 Insta stories minimum a week. And that's as on top of like any random Insta stories. Like if I had a wrap before, tuna wrap, and I just post like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking like I officially do 2 Insta stories on a nutrition topic and 2 posts of some sort on a nutrition topic. And that's like a non-negotiable. I don't care if you're in hospital for the week. I'm taking my laptop in if I have to. I'm just a bit stubborn about that.
Yeah, that was when I got hit by a car. I was so glad that my housemate brought in my laptop and I was still able to work. And like some of my clients like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what else am I gonna do? I gotta sit in here for 48 hours. Like there's this shitty TV on here. I can only watch Netflix for so long. Like my attention span sucks to watch a whole movie anyway. Like I want to do something. But I was I was just so glad that I had moved to online and having something established where I still had like some kind of purpose to fulfill while being injured. And that was a big thing for me. So I guess that probably adds to our conversation earlier when someone's injured and the identity is kind of gone. It's like, what can you still fulfill or be needed for? And I guess maybe sometimes content creation could be like that. But I guess for people that aren't in this space, there has to be something else.
I hate that motivational move, like the motivational talks on YouTube, like all those bodybuilders are like, you just gotta not stop making excuses and just get after it. But I will say, after the injury, I watched the Arnold Schwarzenegger Netflix series.
Is that the newest
And
one?
yeah, pretty new, I think, pretty new.
Yeah, I haven't
And
seen it yet.
he's obviously got his like 10 commandments or whatever it is, and I'm just like, whatever. But he
Yeah.
said something in there which kind of resonated with me a lot, and that was like always be useful.
Hmm.
And I kind of took that during the injury, and I was like, well, I can't surf. What can I do to be useful?
Yeah.
And it didn't make it that much easier, but it helped. I'll give it
Mhm.
that. And I ended up helping my brother out with his work. I was
Yeah.
like, how can I be useful? And that brought about lots of different positive things just doing that and that experience.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's a little extra thing there. Be useful.
Yeah, I guess that's like I just naturally just tried to talk about my injury and what I was trying to do, and I had people like who had other injuries and stuff at the time talk to me. So I
Mm,
guess we like, and even found like a bit of a rapport where we would kind of touch base and check in on each other. Where it helped me felt be useful in that time. And I think if you're
mm,
always just looking at kind of entertaining yourself while being injured,
mm,
I don't want to go down the whole neuroscience thing, but you got to just blunt that dopamine response. Like, there's only so many games and TV stuff and
mm.
Instagram. Like, he just starts to really flatline.
Oh,
Um,
that's just like, what are you doing?
yeah,
People will say, oh, but you're injured. You can't do anything. Just watch Netflix for a bit. Like, it's okay. It's like, well, that's not useful. I'm
yeah,
not doing anything productive. I got to do something productive.
yeah. I find sometimes I just make like a stupid meme or something in Canva or something as well,
Yeah.
just because I've got no creative outlet. I think this is what made me a little bit better with content creation, like with some like the carousel slides. There's some kind of artistic thing to it. Then it's gave me some outlet of being creative and
Mm,
artistic,
yeah.
which I never really had in my life. So that's how I kind of started enjoying it when I found that site. Instead of just finding a random image or a photo of myself and writing a caption, like that didn't really have
Yeah.
any excitement in that.
Picture of you like with your abs out. How bad do you want it?
Yeah, definitely. But it gets more likes. That's why every now and then, every 3-4 months, I'll put out a thirst pic to get that engagement.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Wow.
yeah. So you used to be quite heavy into resistance training a few years ago before you really got stuck into surfing. So
Yeah.
once you started getting into surfing, I'm sure there would have been some kind of regression and atrophy. How
Oh
did
yeah.
that play on your mind as well?
So the story is that actually surfing was like the thing I did from a really little kid. Like when I was a teenager, I used to do comps. I was really into it, like took it really seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I finished school, I was at uni and you're going out a bit, and surfing was just like an afterthought. And I actually just canned it because I stopped enjoying it. And then I started with the PT thing, and I got into training. I was hanging out with people who were bodybuilders, and
Mm-hmm.
like I took that really seriously. Where something that would get in the way of the recovery for that or whatever was just like,
Yep,
no,
yep.
I'm not interested. And so surfing was my original thing. That's let's just preface this with that, and then I basically just took like a five year, I think it was, could even
Yep.
be 6 years, 5 year break. Now I built a little bit of muscle. I was like, I was never, probably never see me in the street and say, oh, he was jacked. Like you'd never say that at any point. But I thought I looked all right. I was like pretty
Mm-hmm.
proud of what I achieved, blah, 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 blah. And then it's a part of your identity, and that's when it starts to become a little bit toxic.
Mm-hmm.
But then I realized that this isn't it. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was doing, like, I never wanted to be a gym guy. I never wanted to be that bodybuilder-esque dude. And I was
Mm-hmm.
living that lifestyle. And because I didn't really find it fun, I just
Yeah.
did it. I was void of fun, like leisurely
Yeah.
activities, you know? So then it was a trip to Lombok in Indonesia with my girlfriend. And I remember we were staying in a place where, there were surfers around, and they were riding their scooters with their boards on the racks there. And I remember looking at them and thinking, like, I'm really starting to realize that I need a leisurely activity here.
Mm-hmm.
I've realized that, I'm kind of like the gym thing. It's like, for me to gain another 5 kilos of muscle, like, would absolutely just be, is it worth it? And I came to
Yeah.
the conclusion that it's not. but I didn't have that next thing to pull me away from it. So I just kept doing it. But anyway, and then I came back to Sydney after that month-long trip, and I said to my brother, I was like, "Do you have my old board in your garage?" And he was like, "Yep." I just got it straight. I remember paddling out at Bronte without a leg rope, first surf in 6 years, and it's like riding a bike. If you do it as a kid, and you're competent, it's like riding a bike or driving a manual car. And within like 3 days, it was back to normal, and then it was like I just kept doing it. I didn't stop. I just got back into it one day, and then every day after that, every day I would go for a surf pretty much.
Yeah.
And I still kept training pretty hard too in the gym, but the capacity to tolerate volume just took a big dive, and I wasn't getting stronger. I was doing less volume because I couldn't handle it. I actually hurt my back and I couldn't surf for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was seeing it chiro, and then I just thought, no, the gym needs to be pulled back because the surfing is the thing that's bringing me so much joy. I've never felt this good for years. Like, I'm so happy. I don't care about the gym, but there was still that thing of like muscle loss and stuff. But, then kind of I was living in the Gold Coast at that point, and I was still training at least to a maintenance level in the gym. So I hadn't actually lost really, I'm going to say, much muscle, not a whole lot. But then it's sort of when I started traveling, where I would just sort of let go of training, and I wouldn't train for months, really. At best, I would do like an outdoor workout with some push-ups and maybe some pull-ups if I could find something to do it off.
I got some bands here that I do some stuff here and there.
That sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And, I never really thought to myself, I've lost muscle. I never really thought that. It wasn't until close to the injury where I started to realize, geez, your legs are like looking small now. And like, you're looking skinny. I'd see photos and I'd be like, yeah, you really, it wasn't nice. It's not a nice thing. But truthfully, I didn't give a flying. I was like, fuck, I'm so much happier in this lifestyle than I was before. Like, I looked better, cool. But like, so what? Like, I literally didn't care. And when I came back to Sydney, I was like, you're like skin and bones now. I was like, yep, but you had a great time over the last couple of years, and none of those things would have happened if you were still stuck in that, I've got to
routine.
Build muscle. Oh, no, can't go on that holiday because how am I going to track my macros? Like, none of that shit would have happened if I was still sucked into that void. So 100%. No regrets. Don't give a flying. But you know what? Be useful. And I've got 6 months ahead of me of rehab. I can't do much right now. I'm on crutches. But, the training, I'm going to, I can't surf, so I'm going to go take the training seriously. And maybe I will gain some muscle back. If I don't care. But, that's how it is.
Yeah.
You just realize that after a while, this lifestyle is just not serving me. And then it's easy. You don't even care about losing muscle at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at the moment. It's also a bit of like, I want to be in a lighter weight category. And because I was competing in light heavyweight, and I'm only 5'8", if I'm touching 5'8" as well. So I'll be competing against guys maybe 6'2", 6'4" with long legs. I actually had my arm, the end of my bicep snapped in a competition as well. So I wanted to drop weight and be lighter just because I'll be like more, even with the height and limbs. And as I got to a point where I had to kind of just give up some muscle mass or try to get super, super shredded, which is then low energy availability. And really so it gets to that point where trying to diet down. So I just kind of took it on the chin, just like, if I'm going to lose some muscle mass. And I actually stopped weight training for like 8 months at one point and just did jets. And I didn't care that I lost it, like, because there's also another side of me, I guess, like an alpha ego thing. Is like, well, even though I'm 6 kilos lighter, I could fuck up the old version of myself. I can choke you out, no problem. So I guess whatever things that helps you deal with that. But 5 years ago or more, as soon as I lost a bit of muscle mass, I would definitely be like, oh my God, like I'd get like anxious about it. And I guess that was like the old bodybuilder kind of side. But now I just don't give a fuck. And
bro, I so know what you're talking about. This injury, if I had this like 5 years ago, I'd have been beside myself. I'd be like, my quads, they're going. And like there's this other person in the fitness industry who's very body dependent, who's recently had a pretty bad arm injury, and it's sort of like 6 months no training. And I'm like, I feel for you. I know that
Yeah.
because their career, their identity, there's no like additional activities.
Yeah.
It's that sort of me 5 years ago sort of situation. And you're just like, that's not
Yeah.
where you want to be.
I remember like I had like a grade 1 tear in my hamstring. And like it
Yeah.
wasn't that, it was maybe 2 weeks off and then a little bit of time kind of building back up. And I remember I was like fully depressed. And I was like 3 months out from a comp. It wasn't even like super close. And I
Yeah.
remember like almost starting to spiral into depression. So yeah, I'm so glad I don't live in that lifestyle anymore.
I know, right? And the other thing for me, like similar to you, you wanted to be lighter so you can be more competitive
And
in
more
jits.
mobile. Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah. For me, it's like I actually love being a fit person.
Mm-hmm.
And in surfing, I've always considered myself really fit, like being able to sit further out than most guys and glide in because I can paddle harder, paddle for longer. And, I get in little battles with people I surf with, and I kind of get this little like kick out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if I'm lighter, I'm going to be better at that. So there was that driver as well for me from a performance perspective, which made it so much easier for me to just not give a flying.
Yeah. Yeah, when it's an advantage. And when I lost some size too, like my mobility and flexibility increased a lot and allowed me to move better and retain my guard and possibly invert. These are all probably things you're not too sure what I'm talking about, but
Yeah, invert, RKO.
I'm sure a lot of my friends listening will know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
What I like to do when I like to wrap it up, I like to ask for like 3 tips. So if you could give exactly 3 tips for someone mentally recovering from an injury, whether it's their leisurely sport or actually professional sport.
Oh,
I guess we
recovering
already
from
touched
injury.
base on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't recovered from the injury yet, so pack it easy.
I'm sure you've
um,
had other injuries before too.
yeah, I've had other injuries. I would say, firstly, be useful. I
Mhm.
hate to take a quote from Arnold. Oh, I hate it. It kills me.
He was
But
successful
it's
for a reason though. You got to take
yeah,
something from his book.
it's good. Be useful. Um, Number 2 is accept that it's going to be shit, and it's okay to be really upset about it. Don't try and just be like this tough guy or tough girl who's like, no, it's just there's no point in getting angry. It doesn't do anything for you. It's just a waste of emotions.
Yeah.
No, nothing. Just let yourself get angry. Let yourself throw a couple of things at walls.
Yeah.
Let yourself swear. Like,
Yeah.
just let yourself do all the things.
I think
And
you could even
finally,
say
yeah,
release judgment of you being shitty or probably like
yeah.
not the most humble person. Like let it go.
Yeah, and sometimes I used to like be self-conscious because an ACL is a big injury, but
Mm-hmm.
comparatively to what other injuries people have, it's nothing. And
Yeah.
I would feel like I'm, complaining when there are people in the same gym that I'm doing rehab at who've had 9 surgeries on their knee because they had a motorbike accident. They got plates everywhere, and you hate to be that, and they're probably looking at you going, "Yeah, well, that's cute."
Yeah.
So that sort of thing. But just what, it's all relative. It's all
Mm-hmm.
perception based. So just don't judge yourself for that. And the last one would be, okay, what can I control?
Mm-hmm.
What can I do that moves me forwards?
Yep.
And what can I do to take action on that? That would probably be my biggest 3 tips
Yeah.
from someone who hasn't actually recovered yet.
Yeah. But that's from your previous experience with other injuries as well. So
Fair enough. Yeah.
I'm sure when I talk to you later on when you're recovered, these 3 all had large impacts.
Yeah, I hope so. That'd be nice.
And then I could reshare it again when it has more use and it makes more of a I'm trying to think of the right name. That it's reasonable and tested.
Yeah, that's it, mate. That's
Is
exactly
there anything
right.
else you'd like to tell the listeners or share with them before we wrap this
Um,
up?
I wanted to say thanks to you for having me on.
My pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
Of course. I also wanted to say, if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's just my name with an underscore at the end, no spaces.
I'll share the link in the bio thing too.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to say is thanks for listening to the listeners.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to another episode of HopeSpeak, and hopefully you tune in next time. Peace out.
Peace out.